In a forgotten frontier town, a single mother ran a quiet little café, just trying to leave the war behind. But when ruthless thugs came to take everything, they didn't know her past. She wasn't just a cook. She was a Marine Corps combat leader. And when they crossed the line, she didn't beg. She didn't run. She made one call, and her old unit came back. Not for revenge, but to defend one of their own. What happened next? Turned a peaceful cafe into a battlefield. The wind blew dry dust across the empty street as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting long, jagged shadows over the weather-worn storefronts of Clearwater, a frontier town forgotten by progress. The only sound came from the creak of a sign swinging above a modest building that read, Sadie's Place. Coffee, pie, warm meals. Inside, the last customer pulled his hat low and nodded his thanks to the woman behind the counter. Lena Morgan gave a tired smile. Her hands, calloused but graceful, wiped the same spot on the wooden counter as she always did when her thoughts drifted to darker places. She stood straight, every motion efficient. Years of combat did that to a person, taught them how to make do, how to read silence like a map. But war had also taught her how to live without expecting peace. She glanced at the old rifle mounted above the door. Not just for decoration. Nothing in her cafe was. Every chair could become a barrier. Every door was reinforced. Every exit memorized. The bell above the door jingled. Lena tensed. But it was just Sadie, her 11-year-old daughter, cheeks flushed from running. She wore boots too big for her. A little girl's laces knotted in a soldier's double loop. "Mama, there's men outside the blacksmith's. Big ones. They were looking this way." Lena didn't flinch. She knelt, brushing a strand of hair from Sadie's face. "What did they say?" "Nothing. Just laughed. One of them spat on the ground and said, 'A woman running the street now? Ain't right.' That was enough." The threats had been creeping closer since the town's old mayor died. Clearwater was lawless now, held together by fear and favors. Sheriff Tillman was just a uniform. His courage ran thinner than river ice. The real law came in the form of the Iron Fangs, a gang that sank into the town like rot into wood. Lena stood, her eyes sharp. Not angry, not afraid, just calculating. "Go inside, lock the back. If anyone knocks, don't answer unless it's me." Sadie hesitated. "You said we're done fighting." "I said we're done chasing war." Lena forced a smile. "But we don't run from it." As Sadie disappeared behind the kitchen curtain, Lena walked to the door and stepped onto the porch. The air was cooler now, heavy with dust, and something else, menace. 3 figures leaned against the rail outside the blacksmith's, their laughter jagged and mean. One saw her and elbowed the others. They didn't come over. They didn't need to. The message had been sent. She stared back without blinking, then turned and went inside. That night, after Sadie fell asleep to the sound of coyotes howling, Lena stayed up, watching the street. She cleaned her old field knife with the same precision she'd once used to dismantle rifles in desert heat. The past was never far. Her unit had scattered after the last deployment. Some had vanished into normal lives. Others hadn't made it. She hadn't spoken to any of them in years. She reached under the counter and unlocked the steel box bolted to the floor. Inside lay a folded photograph, a younger Lena in uniform, grinning with a team of hardened Marines under a sun that didn't forgive. She ran her finger over their faces. Reese, Callahan, Emo, Torres, each one etched into her soul like battle scars. The next morning, the windows were shattered. Glass covered the floor like frozen rain. Red spray paint slashed across the front wall. "Get out." The sheriff came, took notes, shrugged. "Boys get rowdy sometimes," he muttered, eyes darting to the street. "Best not provoke him." Lena didn't answer. She just swept the glass, boarded the windows, and kept serving pie. The whispers grew louder. Folks stopped coming in. One by one, chairs at Sadie's place sat empty. The air thickened with fear. Lena noticed a figure sitting across the street one evening. A man with a limp, wearing a brown duster, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. He watched the cafe, but never came closer. She knew a scout when she saw one. Sadie asked, "Why don't we go somewhere else?" "Because if we run now, we'll always be running." That night, Lena sat on the back steps, the desert stretching beyond the last row of houses. She stared at her phone, thumb hovering over a number she'd memorized but never dialed. The door creaked open. Sadie sat beside her. She didn't speak. Lena finally whispered, "You remember the story I told you? The one about the canyon and the fox?" Sadie nodded. "The fox that turned back even when he was bleeding." "That's right. He wasn't the biggest or the loudest, but he knew how to hold the line." "You were the fox, weren't you?" Lena didn't answer. She didn't need to. Later, after Sadie went to bed, Lena walked to the counter, picked up the old satellite phone, and dialed. A long pause. Then a click. "No hello. Just breathing." "It's me," she said. "You hurt?" "No. Not yet." Another pause. "What do you need?" the voice asked. Lena closed her eyes. "I need the team." Her voice was calm, steady. "They came for my daughter's home. That makes it a battlefield." The voice was quiet. Then, "We'll be there." She hung up, stared out into the dark street where the gang had scrawled their threat. She whispered, not to them, but to herself, like a promise carved into stone, "You picked the wrong fox." The morning sun rose blood orange over Clearwater, slicing shadows across the boarded windows of Sadie's place. The town stirred slowly, but Lena Morgan was already outside, hammer in hand, driving nails into the plywood with a rhythm that echoed down the silent street. She worked like she was sealing a coffin, deliberate, unflinching. Her knuckles were raw, her eyes unreadable. Inside, Sadie sat at the counter, chin resting on her folded arms. She traced invisible shapes into the wood, flinching every time the hammer struck. The cafe no longer smelled like cinnamon or coffee. It smelled like ash and tension, the kind that clung to the skin. "You think they'll come back?" Sadie asked without looking up. Lena didn't answer. She lowered the hammer slowly, stepping back to inspect the window. One eye always on the street. One ear always tuned to the silence. Sheriff Tillman arrived in his usual shuffle, his boots dusty, hat low, face pale with excuses. He looked at the broken glass like it was someone else's mess. "They're just boys, Lena. Drunk, probably." "Boys don't make threats with fire," she replied coldly. He sighed. "You make this a thing, it'll be worse. You know what they are. Fang's got claws now. They're not just local boys with pistols, they've got backing. Someone's funding them. Someone out east." "They fund cowards too?" she asked. The sheriff didn't answer. He tipped his hat and walked away without looking back. Sadie watched from the window as the lawman retreated. "He's scared." Lena nodded. "Fear makes people forget who they are." As the town moved on with its business, what little of it remained, Lena swept the shards again. She noticed one of the letters spray-painted on the door had begun to flake, curling like dried skin. Beneath the red, the wood grain showed through. Still standing. That night, the whispering returned. Footsteps in the alley. A bottle shattered behind the cafe, the hiss of fire licking brick before it sputtered out. Lena grabbed the extinguisher, eyes scanning the shadows. They were testing her. She didn't sleep. She sat in the back room, the sat phone on the table beside her, unopened boxes of old gear at her feet. Her mind drifted, not back to the war, but to the moment it ended. The day she left the Corps and promised herself Sadie would never have to know what it meant to survive by instinct. That promise was crumbling like the cafe walls. In the morning, mail arrived late. A plain envelope slid under the front door, no return address. Inside, a photo, Sadie walking home from school. A second one, Lena herself, taken through a rifle scope. A red X marked her chest. She stared at the images. Not fear, not rage, just a long, slow breath. She burned the photos in the sink, then walked outside and crossed the street, boots crunching gravel with the weight of a different woman. She pushed open the saloon doors. The Iron Fangs liked to drink early. Sure enough, 3 of them sat at the back, same ones who'd laughed by the blacksmith. Their leader, Ray Delano, was there too, lounging with his boot on a table, face shadowed by the brim of a black hat. He looked up lazily as Lena entered. Didn't expect coffee to walk over here on its own. Lena didn't blink. Your boys are getting sloppy. Leaving evidence. Making noise. Ray grinned. You think this is noise? Nah. Noise is when fire meets blood. I've seen blood. Yours won't surprise me. His face twitched. Just a little. Enough. You a soldier, sweetheart? She stepped forward, every movement controlled. I was a captain. Marine Corps. I trained men tougher than you to follow orders in sandstorms while bleeding. The bar fell silent. Even the bartender paused, his glass wiping. Ray's grin returned, thinner now. That's cute. But this ain't a battlefield. This is business. And you're in the way. She leaned in, voice soft but hard as steel. I own one cafe. You think I'm alone? She left without waiting for an answer. Back at Sadie's place, the wind kicked up again, tossing grit across the steps. Lena took a deep breath, walked into the back room, and opened the first of the sealed boxes. Inside, combat boots, field radios, a folded tactical vest. The memories came with the scent of oil and canvas. She didn't push them away. She dialed the sat phone again. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice. Callahan. It's me, she said. A pause. I saw the news. Clearwater's been getting noisy. They're making threats. Targeting my girl. Callahan's voice grew still. Who else knows? No one yet. Just you. For now. There was a long breath on the line, and then the voice softened. You sure you're ready for this again? I'm not sure of anything, Lena said. But they're coming. And they don't know who I was. Callahan's tone shifted. Then it's time they learn. Lena stared out the cracked window. The street was empty again, but not quiet. Nothing about this felt quiet. You remember Reese? She asked. Still off-grid, but reachable. You want him too. I want the team. Callahan chuckled softly. Like old times. Not like old times, she replied. This time, we're not at war. No, he asked. Then what do you call this? Lena looked down at her daughter's name stitched into the apron she wore over old scars and new armor. I call this home. The line went dead, but not before she heard what she needed most, a promise. Help was coming. The train hissed like a waking serpent as it pulled into Clearwater, its iron belly exhaling steam across the dusty platform. No one spoke. The station master leaned against the post with a chewed toothpick, watching the single figure step off the last car. A broad-shouldered man with sun-worn skin, carrying a pack slung low across his back and a long coat that whispered over his boots like a memory. Reese Thompson looked like a man made of leather and iron. He paused, squinting into the morning glare, eyes sweeping the town with the slow precision of a marksman. The town hadn't changed, but the silence had. He could smell fear in the boards, see it in the empty chairs outside the barber shop, hear it in the way children didn't laugh. He adjusted the weight of the scoped rifle case on his shoulder and headed toward the only place in town that still felt alive. Sadie's place. Inside, the scent of coffee and gun oil mingled in the air. Lena stood behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, a pistol holstered discreetly beneath it. She didn't speak at first. Neither did Reese. He simply dropped his pack beside a stool, sat, and nodded once. You took your time, she said. Had to lose a tail. Someone didn't like me boarding that train. She poured 2 mugs. Still not sleeping? He shook his head. Dreams don't care what side of the war you're on. From the kitchen, Sadie peeked out. Mama, is that one of your soldier friends? Lena smiled. That's Reese. He taught me how to shoot faster than I could blink. Reese tipped his hat. And she outshot me 2 weeks later. Sadie grinned, then disappeared back behind the curtain. You tell the others, he asked quietly. They're coming. Outside, the wind changed. A rider approached, dust trailing like a comet. The horse was chestnut and fast, and the rider, a woman, leaned forward with the confidence of someone who'd outrun worse. She dismounted in a fluid motion, boots hitting the dirt like thunder. Her name was Emo Delgado, and she carried her war in the set of her jaw. Emo stepped through the cafe door, eyes narrowing. Still smells like cinnamon and hellfire. Lena walked around the counter and pulled her into a hug. They didn't hold on long. Marines never did. But they held tight enough to remind each other they were still real. I saw the paint, Emo said. Saw the photos too. This is personal. They made it personal when they watched my daughter walk home from school through a scope. Reese stood, his jaw tightening. Then they've chosen the wrong town. That night, Callahan arrived in a supply wagon that looked borrowed from an army depot. He wore a preacher's coat and spectacles now, but beneath that was the same calm, lethal intelligence that once made him their mission planner. He greeted Lena with a look that said everything. He'd expected this call. He'd just prayed it would never come. The four of them stood in the back room, a map of Clearwater pinned to the wall with carving knives. Lena pointed out positions, alleys, blind corners, likely ingress points. They listened, took notes, discussed fallback zones, rally signals, supply caches. Emo leaned over the map. You sure about that roofline? Tested it last week, Lena said. Still stable. Perfect for overwatch. Reese grunted. Then I'll need sandbags and a blanket. Want me invisible? Callahan added. And I'll take the west flank. Quiet entry routes need watching. They'll come like wolves. No full frontal assault. They want to humiliate, not fight fair. Lena's voice cut through. They don't think I'll fight at all. They prepared for days. Not openly, but methodically. The townsfolk watched with confusion at first, then awe. The café transformed by night. Reinforced doors, false walls, sandbag windows, emergency lights hidden behind flour sacks. Sadie's place had become a fortress, and no one noticed. Sadie watched the team work with wide eyes. She followed Mo around, asking questions about gear, tactics, war stories. Mo showed her how to braid her hair tight, like a warrior. Callahan taught her how to read tracks in the dirt, how to move quietly. Reese, ever silent, handed her a pocket compass. What's it for? Sadie asked. Reese looked down at her, eyes softer than the steel he carried. So you always know how to get home. Late one night, Lena stood on the rooftop, staring across the town she once tried to rebuild. Reese joined her, setting his rifle down gently. You ever think we'd be back here? She asked. Not like this. They're going to come hard. Good, he said. Let them. She looked at him, expression unreadable. You sure we're not the ghosts now? Reese shook his head. Ghosts don't bleed. And I plan to make them bleed if they touch that girl. Lena nodded. Her hand found the pendant beneath her shirt, a metal-turned keepsake, the one she'd nearly left behind when she walked away from it all. Now it burned against her skin like a brand. A knock came at the back door. One of the townsfolk, young Jacob, the blacksmith's apprentice, stood there, wringing his hands. Miss Lena, they sent word. Said they're coming tomorrow night. Sundown. Said they'll take everything unless you're gone. Lena stepped into the moonlight, the shadows sharpening every line on her face. Then we'll be ready, she said. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone. The sun bled into the horizon like a dying fire as the town of Clearwater held its breath. Every window was shuttered, every door locked tight. Chickens huddled in coops without stirring. Not a single hoofbeat echoed in the street. The silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of something holding its scream. Lena stood at the second-floor window of Sadie's place, her hand resting lightly on the rifle mounted beside the curtain. Below, the cafe looked ordinary, even abandoned, an illusion crafted by precision. To the left, Reese was already in position on the saloon roof, his long rifle nestled into sandbags, scope glinting just once before he covered it with burlap. On the right flank, Mo sat cross-legged in the alley behind the general store, twin knives strapped to her thighs, eyes closed, listening. Callahan was unseen, which meant he was exactly where he needed to be. Sadie sat in the back room with Jacob, the blacksmith's apprentice. Her fingers clenched the compass Reese had given her. The trembling had stopped. She'd watched the team prepare all week, watched her mother lead them like she'd never stopped. Sadie wasn't scared now, just still. "They're late," Lena muttered, scanning the dimming street. Reese's voice crackled softly through the shortwave. "Correction, they're on time." Four trucks rolled into view from the west, their engines growling low like wolves circling prey. Men jumped from the beds with bats, chains, pistols. 30, maybe more. They wore black coats and iron fangs stitched into their sleeves. At the center, like a king behind a curtain of smoke, walked Ray Delano. He raised his hand, and the gang stopped. Delano called out, voice thick with smug certainty. "Lena Morgan, come on out now. Let's not turn a business into a grave." Lena stepped through the front doors before anyone could stop her. She walked slowly, deliberately, no weapon in sight. The setting sun caught the metal on her wrist, a bracelet of paracord and spent bullet casings. Ray grinned wide. "There's the lady of the hour. You've got one chance to walk away," she said, calm as dawn. "You take it, you live." Ray laughed, but his men shifted behind him. This didn't feel like a woman bluffing. It felt like a woman who'd fought death once and didn't mind shaking its hand again. "You think I'm scared of some war widow and her diner?" he spat. Lena looked at him, her gaze colder than any blade. "I think you don't know what's inside this building." From the rooftops came the soft click of a bolt sliding into place. Reese locked onto the man holding a Molotov cocktail near the front truck. "Now," Lena said, and stepped aside. The cafe exploded into action. Flashbangs dropped from second-story windows, blinding light tearing through the gloom. Reese's rifle cracked, sending the Molotov flying into the dirt before it could be lit. Mo emerged from the alley like a storm, her knives flashing silver in the dark. Callahan came from behind the bakery, dragging a tripwire taut across the road. 3 of the thugs never saw it coming. Chaos reigned. Screams. Gunfire. The Fangs tried to regroup, but nothing about this was what they'd expected. They weren't ambushing a cafe. They were walking into a war room. Ray ducked behind a barrel, firing blindly. "You said it was just her." One of his lieutenants screamed, dragging a bloody leg. "It's not just her. It's them, it's them." Inside the cafe, Sadie watched as the emergency exit swung open. Lena moved like fire. Fast, consuming, exact. She kicked a thug through the door, slammed it shut, and turned to check her daughter. "Still with me?" she asked. Sadie nodded. "Always." Mo barreled into the kitchen a moment later, out of breath, but smiling. "2 down on my end. These boys don't know how to breathe under pressure." Callahan's voice came through the radio. West cleared, picking off the stragglers. On the roof, Reese watched the last of the gang attempt to flee. He didn't shoot to kill. One well-placed round shattered the engine block of the lead truck. Smoke poured into the street as the rest turned tail. But Ray didn't run. He burst through the front door, wielding a sawed-off shotgun. "You want to scare men, lady? You picked the wrong one." Lena turned to face him head-on. He fired. The blast tore through the wall behind her, missing by inches. She charged. No hesitation. She slammed into him, twisting the weapon free, landing 2 brutal strikes to his jaw. He staggered, spat blood, reached for a knife, but she already had it. She pressed it to his throat, breathing hard. "You crossed a line no man comes back from." He sneered. "You think this changes anything?" Lena leaned close, eyes fierce and steady. "It already has." She stepped back, letting him collapse. Behind her, the sheriff's siren howled, too late to matter, but just in time to witness justice. Lena dropped the blade, turning toward the street where townspeople now gathered. No one spoke, not until Sadie stepped outside, standing tall beside her mother. A hush fell over Clearwater. Then came the first clap. From Jacob, then another, and another. Applause broke the silence, rolling like thunder. They hadn't just won a fight, they'd reclaimed their town. And Lena Morgan stood in the center, not as a soldier, not just a mother, but something greater. She had been their shield, and she had just become their spark.